people get vulnerability assessments, pen tests, gap analysis, risk assessments all intertwined. And it's important to understand that they're all their own thing. So a penetration test, let's start at the top, right? So the big all-encompassing piece is the risk assessment. All of this happens, cybersecurity happens because it's a risk or a hazard or a vector to a threat to the business. Okay, so it's all about risk to the business, or risk to yourself, risk to your privacy. It's about risk. So a risk assessment is the outer piece. Then all the other pieces, whether you're talking about a penetration test, a vulnerability assessment, a standards assessment, a gap analysis, those are all pieces that, although they overlap somewhat, they're all meant to gather a bit different type of data. All of that data is being fed into the risk assessment. Why? Because all of this data are going to be indicators as to the things that can happen, what the likelihood of those things happening are, and the impact. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is we are trying to determine the most likely and impactful threats, and then figure out the most efficient and cost-effective way to deal with those threats with the limited resources that we have available to us. A vulnerability assessment is the most comprehensive way to determine your attack surface and attack vectors. A vulnerability assessment does not help you ascertain or assess risk. It provides data into the risk assessment. So vulnerability assessment is the most comprehensive, the most exhaustive search for vulnerabilities. And typically, the way that I teach it is that vulnerabilities are your attack surface. The weaknesses on the asset, the target, is your attack surface. Then your communication pathways and your attack vectors. Now, there are network vulnerabilities. Sure, there are vulnerabilities like on firewalls that contribute to an attack vector. So yes, there's overlap, but for the most part, vulnerabilities are on the thing, and the attack vector is how you get to the thing. Okay, so that's what a vulnerability assessment is. And that's different from like a penetration test. Penetration testing is in another section of this course, but penetration testing is more of a simulation of the attacker methods. It's actually, we're actually testing security measures and security controls specifically, while we're looking for vulnerabilities in a limited sense in order to find vulnerabilities to exploit. It's not an exhaustive search for vulnerabilities. It is more the action after you find the vulnerabilities. A penetration test is about using vulnerabilities, using the methods of the hacker, simulating an adversary to test for feasibility of vulnerabilities, exploits, findings, that sort of thing. I teach this concept, and it's a perspective of cybersecurity and risk assessments and vulnerability assessments and pen testing that I think that gets missed in a lot of educational programs and certifications. And I think it's the most important part of cybersecurity. So I would be remiss if I taught you techniques on how to improve your efficiency at vulnerability assessments and automating different aspects of cybersecurity if I didn't also mention to you why we're doing this. Why do you do cybersecurity? Especially if you're new to this or you're trying to start a career in cybersecurity, it's really important to understand that this is why you do cybersecurity. This is what it's all about. And if you're already in cybersecurity, if you're not thinking about cybersecurity as risk to the business or production or safety or something like that, then you're not really thinking about it in the correct perspective. So